I'm Rick Taylor. I'm a Democrat running for the United States Senate in Ohio. I grew up in the suburbs of eastern Cleveland. I am not a politician. I've never run for public office. I didn't go to Ivy League schools. I am a working class citizen. Born in 1962, I've witnessed the disintegration of the working middle class. Jobs became fewer, wages became lower, benefits were eliminated, and debt became a thing to subsidize our livelihoods. The American dream that was held out as an inspiration evaporated as our politicians put capitalist profits and greed over the lives and livelihoods of American citizens. Not only have we suffered an economic collapse that rivals that of the Great Depression, it was on the heels of a collapse in 2008 from which we were still recovering. We then had to endure the complete failure of our system to deal with the pandemic, resulting in more deaths than the United States saw in World War II, and fast approaching the deaths we saw during the Spanish flu pandemic of the early 20th century. And it was all fueled by political rhetoric to keep us from uniting for the common good. The income inequality in our country is outrageous and unacceptable. Our elected officials have done nothing to address it in any substantial way. In the past year, the top 10% of our country increased their wealth by almost $9 trillion, while the rest of us were given crumbs. And we rejoiced. We rejoiced because we're desperate. While the top 10% saw their fortunes grow, we, the majority, were given $1,200 in March of 2020 and told it had to last 10 months by the Secretary of the Treasury. We were given unemployment for 16 weeks that ran out in July 2020, and for 6 months we were told to fend for ourselves. Meanwhile, our small businesses closed because relief money meant to ensure they remained operational and they retained their business was pilfered by the corporations in the top 10%, leaving little to nothing for them. Did our politicians stop it? They stood by and watched as thousands of small businesses were forced to close. We watched as our elected officials ended federal unemployment subsidies months before they were set to expire under the guise of a labor shortage. There is no labor shortage. We have more unemployed people in this country than we have jobs. The only shortage is that of the working class people who are willing to work for below poverty level wages, longer hours, and little to no benefits. We watched as our elected officials refused to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, using the excuse that it will hurt small businesses, while ignoring the fact that we subsidize and give tax breaks to billion-dollar corporations without even a thought that we can do that for small businesses as well to help them meet their needs and pay their workers a living wage. Both political parties like to tell us that our economy is booming, yet we have 20 million people unemployed. We have 11 million people facing eviction. A quarter of our country report they don't have enough food to eat. The richest country in the world. While I fully support the Biden administration and their relief efforts and their efforts to aid so many who are suffering, we must face reality. We've been to this rodeo multiple times over the past 50 years. It never ends well for the American working and middle class. For the past 50 years, our politicians from both parties continually tell us that they're for the working class. They all promise to bring back jobs. They all promise to improve our incomes. They all promise to improve our communities. How's that been working out for everyone? Have your job opportunities improved? Have your wages improved? Have your communities improved? Now we're buried in debt. Our cars, our homes, our credit cards, our educations. We can no longer allow inaction from our elected officials and career politicians who say the right things, put on a good political show up for protests and labor strikes, but never seem to produce results. Ask yourself, why do our elected officials from both parties serve the capitalist interests better than they serve the majority, the working class, the very people who vote them into office? We all know the answer. They've bought our politicians, both of our political parties, and our Supreme Court. The result? A middle class that is disintegrated before our eyes. Income inequality like we've never seen or imagined. Political division that's intentional to prevent us from seeing the common causes that should be uniting us. It wasn't always that way. Throughout the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, the working class was united across the political spectrum. The working class, angered by the income inequality, greed, and corruption of the capitalists, formed a coalition so powerful that together we achieved the very things that strengthened and expanded the middle class. Things like Social Security, a minimum wage, unemployment insurance, and other programs that benefited us, the majority. How did we achieve those things? We made the capitalists, the corporations, and the 1% pay. From the 1930s through the early 1980s, the wealthy paid taxes in this country between 70 and 94%. Corporations still prospered, the rich still got richer, and the working and middle class thrived. We must address the income inequality that has hobbled our middle class growth and stolen the American dream from so many. Income inequality and a middle class disintegration that is directly parallel to the tax cuts for the rich. We must undo the last 50 years of income redistribution the same way they undid the redistribution we obtained with the New Deal under FDR. In order to achieve change, we need to rehabilitate the coalition of the working class. The coalition that strengthened our unions, that reached past political barriers, and gave us the tools to expand and strengthen the working middle class. The very coalition the capitalists have spent many years and many millions of dollars to keep divided, as evidenced in the deep political divisions in our society. We've witnessed that intentional division of our coalition, turning on each other, hatred, violence, stoked by political figures, both Democrat and Republican, in hopes that we don't realize that those divisions are keeping us from regaining our power and obtaining the very things we all want. Better jobs, better incomes, thriving communities, less debt, and a healthier, cleaner environment for us and our future generations. It is time for the working class to unite and take our power back. We can beat this system and make it work for us once again. To do so, we must replace career politicians who have proven to be ineffective and beholden to their capitalist donors, no matter how well they perform their political theater and pander to us to obtain votes. We must provide ourselves with true representation. We must elect actual working class people to all levels of our government. Construction workers, teachers, nurses, store clerks, people who know and understand the challenges that the working class face, not just saying they do. I may not be the ideal candidate, but I'm the right candidate. I've been poor. I've prospered. I've lived on a fixed income. I've faced life-threatening illness with no medical insurance. I've faced discrimination. I know what it's like to go up against a system that puts money and privilege before basic human rights and dignity. I've worked for law enforcement. I've been incarcerated. I have experienced the very things I address in my campaign. I don't say I'm fighting for the working class. I am the working class. I will fight to bring change to a corrupt capitalist system that gives preference to the top 10% while the rest of us are treated like a drain on society. Far too many politicians decry the money in politics while raising millions of dollars for positions that pay under $174,000 a year. My campaign will not be accepting donations from PACs, corporate donors, and special interest groups. I won't perpetuate the very system I rally against. I also recognize the financial burdens you're facing and the stress it places on the working class. So put food on your table, pay down your debt, put money in your children's college funds. I'd rather have your vote. For those who agree with my message and do choose to donate to me, any individual who donates in excess of $250, I will donate the difference to a charity as close to your community as I'm able. As I unveil my campaign over the next few months, my campaign will rely on my message and your word of mouth to make sure that message is spread. Join me on my journey, and together we can and will resuscitate the working middle class. We will reestablish the coalition of the working class that gave us the power to effect change and allowed us to improve our lives. This is not unobtainable, but to achieve it, we have to put politics aside. Our issues are not Democrat or Republican. They affect all of us. We can no longer allow our political parties to distract us by focusing us on emotional issues that only divide us, causing us to lose sight of our common cause and the things that affect each and every one of our lives. I now would like to address the events that happened at our Capitol. On January 6th of 2021, there was an insurrection against the United States of America and our government. Donald Trump remains free. Seditionists and traitors are still seated in both the House and the Senate, the People's House. Insurrection is being treated like a group of drunk teenagers getting rowdy on a Saturday night. If our elected officials cannot protect and defend our government from attacks from within, it has failed you, me, and our democracy. So I say to all those elected officials, in or out of office, who incited, encouraged, promoted, and defended the assault on our democracy, I'm coming for you. I'm Rick Taylor, your next senator from Ohio.